trout are rising for the mayfly, and the sun is shining down on the valley. Hope to be a fly fish till the day that I die. Spring has thawed out the long bitter winter. The water is clear and the skies are blue. I'm standing in the middle of the Delaware River. Might even catch and release one or two. Life is good when I'm wading the river. Gets even better when I cast a fly. If I catch a trout, it don't really matter. It's fun just to be here and give it a try. Stoneflies and caddis and the riffles are plenty. Mayflies a courting on fragrant breeze. The cedar wax wings come down from the heavens, wait for their dinner up in the pine trees. Trout is rising in the far eddy. I make a false cast, then take my aim. If he takes the fly, I'd feel so much better, and if he doesn't, I'll feel no shame. The water is cold and my waders leak. It's raining now on my favorite stream. I'll bear it all, just fish with a feather, so when I sleep I will have a sweet dream. Life is good when I'm wading a river. Gets even better when I cast a fly. Trout, it don't really matter. It's fun just to be here and give it a try. Ripples and waves, pools and eddies, trout are rising for the dry fly, and the sun is shining down on the valley. Hope to be a fly fishing till the day that I die. Spring has thawed out the long bitter winter. The water is clear and the skies are blue. I'm standing in the middle of the Beaver Kill River. Might even catch and release one or two. Ripples and waves, pools and eddies, trout are rising for the dry fly.
Howdy, Kurt. 1, 2, 3.
Ah, you got me. Best 2 out of 3.
Yeah, that's two.
I didn't see you there. Hey, folks, how you doing? Welcome to Riffles and Waves, the fly fishing show for kids of all ages. I'm Kurt Nelson, and I'm here today with my guest here, Bob Schelke. Now, today's show is going to be kind of about conservation issues, and one of the things that I'd like to talk about is the Nanticoke Creek. Bob and I, along with many other guys from the Ale Hazard chapter, Trout Unlimited, back in '97, started looking at Nanticoke as a possible rehabilitation type project to make it a better fishery for trout and improve the fishing rights and access on that stream. So, Bob, how you doing?
Pretty good. Nice to be here, Kurt.
Why don't you fill us in on how we began? How did we get this project started?
Well, some of us in Trout Unlimited thought, like you were saying, of trying to rehabilitate a stream that many years ago, before there were farms and a lot of people settled along the creek, trees shading the banks, it had been quite a good trout stream. Nanticoke Creek starting way at the top of our county and emptying into the Susquehanna near West Endicott. Mm-hmm. But over the years, there were encroachments and the water quality changed and stuff. But then a lot of the farms left. Trees grew up shading the bank, stabilizing the bank. The water, we passed laws, making the water cleaner. So we were wondering, what potential does it have? Do you have to drive, an hour to get to a trout stream, or is it possible that this what had been regarded as a put and take trout
Fishery.
stream? Yeah.
What's a put and take?
Put and take is the hatchery truck comes, they unload some stock fish, you put them in, and they expect that the fish won't survive, but they only put them in because people will have fun in April when they have cabin fever and take them out.
Right.
So we wanted to see if it could be more than that.
So they're put in there for people to take out, and in a lot of cases, those put and take streams warm up. So one of the ending problems is a lot of trout that aren't caught and taken home for dinner end up dying in the stream. So that's really a shame. So one of the goals is to find these springs and these sections on the Nanticoke and isolate them and maybe do stream break projects down the road. But we had to get public fishing rights first. How did that take place? How we did some studies on the stream, but how did we get to where we are? First we did what? We had 5 teams go out to the stream, and
that's right. We took the submersible thermometers and took temperatures right during the hottest part of the year, mid to late August.
Yep. So on the hottest time of the year, we went out and tried to get temperatures
in the 80s and 90s. And what's the preferred range, would you say, of temperature for trout that are going to live and not just stew in their own juices later in the year?
Well, from everything that I've read, that above 72 can be fatal to trout if they're stressed. Now, trout can survive warmer temperatures in the stream, but when you catch them, if you catch a trout, even if you release it, they build up lactic acid and would die. And so you don't fish when it's warmer than 72. But between 62 and maybe 68 is where the most oxygen can be absorbed in water. So that's really an optimal temperature. You don't want to get over that. And again, if you stay at 45 all year round, the trout will be kind of lethargic.
Logy.
So if you do have a tailwater and the water's really cold, the trout will survive, but they won't be as energetic as trout at 62 degrees will be.
Well, I tell you, Kurt, we found when those days were in the air temperature was the 80s and 90s, we found temperatures in the 50s, 60s, 70s in places where indeed spring water was percolating up through the bottom of the stream, or maybe if the stream was right butted up against the bottom of a hill, there'd be a seepage from the groundwater under the hill. Not quite as cold as the proper springs, but still giving the trout what we call a thermal refuge. So when they're really stressed, they could go to a place and live. And they could breed and have more fish, and that's called a natural trout stream.
So we had 5 teams, and they all went on different segments of the stream. I did the east branch from Junction Pool up. Mm-hmm. And I found some really amazing results up there. Now, were there springs everywhere?
Well,
in all the sections that were tested by our guys, were there springs everywhere?
With one exception would be the uppermost sections of the East Branch above where you were. We found springs and seeps which made thermal refuges. If you take those together with it, also the water was low because there's less rain during the summer, plus evaporation. Along with the cold water, you need a sufficient depth or places where the trout could hide. They're not vulnerable to like a great blue heron going in. We found all depth or cover and shelter, and what the trout need for comfort, the cooler water.
Right. So now we're looking at because of all that work we did 8 years ago or so. How much public fishing rights are we getting on that? DEC doesn't usually buy fishing rights on put and take streams. So how did we get all this public fishing rights?
Well, the temperature study was actually at the behest of the DEC. Dave Lemon from the DEC branch in Cortland suggested we do that, and if we found favorable results and we're willing to locate, which the chapter did, I know you were in the Broome County office building researching
tax maps
or
and all
who
that
owns
stuff.
what section of the stream. and contacted them to see if they were interested. There's a little brochure, which I don't have, but it explains the program where if the stream is a bona fide trout stream, which we had helped determine. Our study was the basis for that.
Right.
They didn't. The DEC didn't do their own study. They had asked us.
Because there were some trout surviving.
Yes.
In the spring holes.
Yes.
So even though it was considered put and take, there were fish surviving, being caught and taken home for dinner, and the warm temperatures.
Right. So the next step was, after knowing we had these contacting, we mailed the brochures with a little cover letter. If you're interested in finding out about this program, or the landowner he still retains ownership of the land. If someone gets hurt fishing on their land, there's no liability, can't be sued. There's it's a win-win situation for the landowner and the angler.
And the stream.
And the stream, and the environment.
Because if somebody, if there was a severe flood or erosion problem, DEC would come in and do some work on it.
Yeah,
right?
some sort of stabilization.
Some sort of stabilization. So it would protect their land ownership. In the sense of not letting it wash down the stream. So it's good for them.
Well, we didn't know when we did this how many people would respond, how many landowners, and it's a very good response, and they were contacted by the DEC, who looked and inspected their stream side footage, gave them a price that they thought it was worth. And so what started out as an unsure thing, through a lot of volunteer organizations and other help for us in this project, was the Broome County Soil and Water Conservation District.
Right.
You know those folks.
Yep, CHIP.
CHIP. It all came together, and as of next month, when opening season starts this year, I believe everything will be in place. If not then, very soon. It's a done deal, Dave Lemon.
So from Pollard Hill Road up how far?
Okay, it's not a continuous stretch, but it starts at Pollard Hill, where the town of Maine has a park right along the creek. It's behind
There's
the
a
Catholic
church. Yep.
Yeah. That's basically public access. It had been the only public access that had been guaranteed before the state secured these what's called public fishing rights. Then a little bit above that, at the Route 26 bridge, there's a new parking area for fishermen designated, and you could go downstream on both banks for a fair piece. And then if you cross over from Route 26 to Nanticoke Road, there's a parking area with a fairly long trail that takes you to a really nice, deep, slow-moving hole.
Wow,
and
that's
you can
great.
fish there. There's another new parking area as a result of the public fishing rights at the bridge across road, and there's a public fishing area on the west branch, along with the parking a lot further up on Nanticoke Road.
Great.
That's
So-
the town,
so
basically
there's a
the
lot of
town of
access
Maine.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically around the town of Maine, you can't drive too far without seeing those signs, and that means you have the right to go there and fish. Fish only.
So all the kids can now take their pole and their bike and ride down to the creek and go fishing right in their backyard. That's really good.
Kids in Maine can do that. If you're dependent upon your folks to drive you somewhere, you don't have to drive an hour.
30 minutes,
And
45
to go
minutes
someplace
to
you
get
don't know.
beyond the Delaware.
Right.
Delaware's 30 minutes away, typically, from Binghamton. So if you go to the Willowweemock or the Jenny Gansett is almost 30 minutes away too.
Yep.
If you, that's a big decision sometime. Let's see, 30 minutes. Jenny or Delaware, which will be fishing better today?
Well, you and I could say that, Kurt, because we've been there.
And
we
we have
know our way
cars.
around, and we have cars. But for someone starting out, that's, I think, what motivated a lot of us in the chapter to really look at this, because it's something in the backyard.
It's in our backyard.
We all start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
You remember where you
Yeah.
started?
Small little creek, Chittenango Creek, actually. But we had to have somebody take us there. We didn't get to go unless I lived right next to Chokinut Creek. But when I moved to Binghamton or Vestal, they had stopped stocking Chokinut Creek the year we moved here.
Not too bad.
So the opportunities for me as a kid to grow up trout fishing was only by car. We had to drive somewhere to go fishing. So hopefully this will change all that. Now to get back, this is conservation, folks. This is what it's all about. Trout Unlimited is a conservation organization. We work with other groups like the Nature Conservancy and Sierra Club and folks like that. So it all comes together. Now, I'd like to show a film today about Overwich Creek Gamble, which is out in Idaho, which is a place that was clear-cut and caused massive erosion, which choked off all the trout streams and some of the salmon spawning beds in Idaho. So take a look at this, and thanks for coming by today, Bob.
Hey, my pleasure. We'll
Hey.
see you on the stream.
We'll see you. There we go. And then
Something is happening to your national forest. On the slopes above Overwich Creek, in the headwaters of the Bitterroot River in western Montana, the trees were cut down, then the mountainsides collapsed. How did this happen? Was it the road building? Was it the clear cutting? Was it the deliberately set fires? Who did this? Was it the Forest Service? Was this done with your tax dollars? We met with the Bitterroot National Forest Supervisor, Steve Kelly. He declined a video interview, but did give us the official Forest Service incident summary, stating, "An intense rainstorm on June 25, 1992, caused severe erosion in the channels of 4 tributaries of Overwich Creek, from the headwaters located in the Overwich 2 burn to the confluence with Overwich Creek. Sediment from the tributaries flowed directly into Overwich Creek and through Painted Rocks Reservoir into the West Fork of the Bitterroot River. Preliminary findings indicate that a large percentage of the fish community in the lower 5 miles of Overwich Creek may have been destroyed. According to forest watershed and soil specialists, clear cuts and roads did not cause the Overwich incident or contribute significantly to the eroded material.
This is not a natural disaster. The Forest Service made a series of high-risk management decisions that led to this catastrophe. First, they built roads into this steep roadless area to get up into some of the last untouched forest for the purpose of cutting down the trees. Then they took the risk of clear-cutting the trees on these steep slopes right down to streamside. Then, when they burned the logging slash during hot, dry weather, wildfires escaped on 2 separate occasions. With 1,800 acres of burned forest, clear cuts to streamside, and roads dicing through steep drainages, the land had been put in a precarious situation.
There's 375,000 miles of roads on the national forest in the United States. That makes the Forest Service the #1 road building agency in the world. That's enough roads to go around the circumference of the earth 15 times. It's 1.5 times to the moon and back. It's 8.5 times the interstate highway system.
These burns that we see today are a result of the Forest Service. They were burning slash and clear cuts, and it got out of control. Until prompted, they were not mentioning the cause of the fire. If a member of the public were to start a brush fire in their backyard and it got onto national forest land, they would get a bill to pay for the firefighting and rehabilitation of the land. In this case, the taxpayer foots the bill. It takes at least 10,000 years to build up soil that can sustain a forest. So soil is not a renewable resource. 10,000 years of evolution of soil is heading downhill, along with boulders 3 feet across and trees 100 feet long. Suspended in the water, the clay, silt, and sand kept moving, hit the creek, and killed the fish. 100 miles downstream, the silt has reached Missoula. From the Clark Fork to the Columbia, it will reach the Pacific Ocean.
The Forest Service has broken the law here. The National Forest Management Act mandates that there are not any practices permitted on the national forest that change the water temperature, the chemical composition, the flow, the sediment load, or fish habitat. On every one of those points, the law has been broken.
Congressionally approved Forest Service mismanagement killed this area, and they continue doing this. This is not old forestry. This is 1980s, 1990s style forestry. I don't know if this is just the new forestry or the new and improved forestry, but it's really the same old forestry.
When the Forest Service punches roads like this into previously wild areas, they're no longer available for wilderness designation. Is that why the Forest Service is in such a road-building frenzy?
Suffering an 8-year drought here in Montana, a 1-inch rainstorm could have been a blessing, but it had a detrimental impact. It doesn't take a scientist to recognize that water will follow the path of least resistance. We are right in the middle of the catastrophe. There are eroded drainages on both sides of this, and yet this drainage is still intact. That's because it hasn't been under Forest Service management. This is indicative of what it would have been like with this 1-inch rainstorm on a natural forest. There would not have been a catastrophe.
What we see here today is horrifying to people. It seems hopeless, and folks feel helpless. But there is a wonderful alternative. It's called the Northern Rockies Ecosystem Protection Act. It's a bill proposed by the Alliance for the Wild Rockies, awaiting introduction in Congress by someone with vision and courage. It's a bioregional approach to ecosystem management, protection, and restoration of wild lands. It encompasses the remaining roadless areas in the Northern Rockies of Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, and adjacent parts of Oregon and Washington. This bill protects the region's remaining big wilderness complexes, as well as undeveloped corridors between them for migrating wildlife. Wildlife and their habitat don't know state political boundaries.
Overwich is not an isolated situation. The Forest Service is road building, clear cutting, and burning on every forest in the United States. When will this happen in your backyard? They sawed the right-of-way for the road, and then they came in and they sawed the trees out of the clear cut. And then when the fire escaped, they sawed the fire lines, and then came the sawing for the fire rehabilitation. Now they come in with saws to attempt to patch up the catastrophe. So basically, that's the Forest Service's main tool, the chainsaw. It seems to be their answer to all the needs of the forest. And they're still out here sawing.
The wild trout fisheries of Montana are world class. The habitat that supports that world-class fishery is on the national forests and the public lands for the most part. The same habitat that supports that fishery, that wild trout fishery, is also the habitat that supports elk, that provides security and cover for elk, that provides security and cover for wide-ranging, low-density species such as lynx and fisher, wolverine, wolf, grizzly, black bear, mountain lion, is also threatened with the cutting that's going on and the logging and the road building that's going on. The reason that much of it is being destroyed is because of political pressure from politicians, from some of the politicians in the administration,
some politicians in Congress, and also through actions of people who hold the real power in the Forest Service. I'm speaking of the chief, of some of the regional foresters, of the chiefs, some of the chief staff. For the most part, the people on the forests and the ranger districts don't hold the real power in the agency. But these people that I mentioned are breaking the laws that govern the administration of the national forest. And they're breaking the regulations and in many cases the forest plan standards through political pressure and coercion and that kind of thing. We all can do something about it. We can and should write to our congressional delegations and ask that an independent group of scientists be appointed to make a special investigation of the administration of the national forests in the northern Rockies. You can also support a bill that hasn't been introduced yet. It's in writing, that would protect all the remaining Rwsea lands. I believe that bill is called the Northern Rockies Ecosystem Protection Act. It's up to all of us as Americans. We have a right and an obligation, actually a duty, to protect the natural resources of this nation from destruction.
On September 9, 1992, Representative Peter Kosmeyer introduced the Northern Rockies Ecosystem Protection Act before the U.S. House of Representatives. Contact your representatives and support this visionary legislation. For more information on the bill, contact the Alliance for the Wild Rockies.
Down to the river the way I usually do. How was I to know someone be there fishing tow? So I asked if I could fish my way upstream. He looked at me and smiled, said, "It's all right with me." With brookies, browns, and rainbows, and mayflies on the hatch. Give me brookies, browns, and rainbows, and one I hope to catch.